A country is represented by its head of state or head of government in global affairs. If a country is blessed with a bold and fearless head of state, no one can dare mess around with such a country. However, if a country has elected a weak, meek, and bleak leader Justin Trudeau as its prime minister, then it must brace for a lot of insult in global affairs. And because Trudeau is Canada's prime minister, this holds true especially for Canada. Apart from issuing official condemnation against Chinese hegemony, Trudeau doesn't really seem to be capable enough to handle China. And therefore, the CCP seems to be able to hurt Canada left, right, and center. Hi and welcome. This is TFI Global, the foreign affairs and geopolitical analysis arm of the TFI Media Group. I am your host Sanbir Ranhotra, and in this video I will tell you how China is cracking down on Canadian nationals in its control and how Trudeau is emboldening the Chinese regime in its plan to harass Canadian nationals. Stay tuned to know more. China is literally messing around with Canadian Prime Minister Justin Trudeau, and he seems completely clueless about how to deal with the paper dragon. A Chinese court has reportedly upheld the death sentence awarded to Canadian Robert Lloyd Schellenberg. The Chinese court rejected his appeal against the death sentence in a drug smuggling case. So, a Canadian national is being sent to the gallows by the Chinese Communist Party. But what is the official response from the Canadian government? Well, all that the Trudeau regime in Canada has managed to do is condemn Schellenberg's death sentence. Meanwhile, China is indifferent at the best and derisive at the worst. Despite the Trudeau government's condemnation, China sentenced another Canadian citizen with 11 years in prison, and that is before it slandered Canadian Prime Minister Justin Trudeau in one of the most humiliating ways. Following the Chinese court's ruling against Schellenberg, Dominic Barton, Canada's ambassador to China, condemned in the strongest possible terms the rejection of Schellenberg's appeal. Barton added, "We remain deeply concerned by China's arbitrary use of the death penalty for Robert Schellenberg." Did you notice something? Even though a Canadian national has been sent to the gallows, Canada has neither warned China of any major consequences, nor has it slammed China. In fact, the Trudeau government has not gone beyond condemning China, and this only emboldens the rogue regime ensconced in Beijing. So, it doesn't come as a surprise that China went on to sentence Michael Spavor, a Canadian businessman who has been detained in China over false allegations of espionage since 2018, to 11 years in prison. Two Canadian nationals, Michael Spavor and Michael Kovrig, a former diplomat, were arrested by Chinese authorities in 2018. Their arrest was a tit-for-tat measure on China's part after Meng Wanzhou, chief financial officer of the Chinese telecom giant Huawei, was arrested by Canada on an extradition request by the US. Similarly, even the death sentence given to Schellenberg seems motivated by the Meng Wanzhou episode. Schellenberg was arrested in 2014 in China's Guangzhou. Initially, in November 2018, the Dalian Intermediate People's Court found him guilty and sentenced him to 15 years in prison and a fine of $23,000, apart from ordering his deportation. Later, when Schellenberg appealed against the original verdict, Chinese prosecutors suddenly realized that the 15-year sentence was too lenient. Incidentally, Schellenberg was retired exactly after Meng Wanzhou's arrest in Canada's Vancouver and was awarded a death penalty. Schellenberg's personal properties too have been confiscated as a result of his retrial. The detention of the Michaels was also a part of China's hostage diplomacy, and by sentencing Michael Spavor, China is making it clear that it will crack down on Canadian nationals under its control if the Trudeau government extradites Meng Wanzhou to the United States. However, all that Justin Trudeau has managed to do all over again is condemn China. He said that Spavor's conviction was absolutely unacceptable and unjust. The Canadian Prime Minister added, "The verdict for Spavor comes after more than 2.5 years of arbitrary detention, a lack of transparency in the legal process, and a trial that did not satisfy even the minimum standards required by international law." Trudeau's benign reactions are sending a clear indication to the CCP. You can keep sentencing Canadian nationals to long terms in prison or even death, and the Canadian government won't mount any pressure on you apart from condemning such acts in a very official and formal language. In fact, China seems least bothered about what the Canadian Prime Minister says or does. Hu Xijin, editor-in-chief of Chinese state-run Global Times, went on to personally slander Justin Trudeau. He posted a screenshot of Trudeau's statement against Spavor's conviction and wrote, Trudeau, governor of US state of Canada, tried to interfere in China's judicial system. He clearly knows that China despises his statement. Hu Shijin slandering Trudeau by calling him the governor of US state of Canada was not just the most comical of slanders, but was also immensely disrespectful to the Canadian citizens who do hold their nation and its sovereignty in high respect. But this also shows the level of concern the Chinese hold over the comments made by the Canadian Prime Minister and of Canada in general. He didn't directly refer to Meng Wanzhou, but his message was amply clear. Even recently, China's Consulate General to Rio de Janeiro, Li Yang, had derided Trudeau in a tweet and had said, "Boy, your greatest achievement is to have ruined the friendly relations between China and Canada and have turned Canada into a running dog of the US." Yang's derisive remarks did not invite any response from Canada, and this is why Hu seems to have gotten emboldened to insult the Canadian Prime Minister all over again. It is hard to digest that China has gone scot-free despite personally insulting Canada's head of government. Hu Shijin represents the hostile Chinese sentiment that fuels Beijing's hostage diplomacy. However, the Canadian Prime Minister is simply not hitting back at China. And this is why China is fearlessly messing around with Canadian citizens in order to mount pressure on Ottawa in relation to Meng Wanzhou's extradition case.